Hey everyone, welcome to Bickering Book Reviews. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Becky.
And today we're talking about Shout by Laurie Halse Anderson. I was able to get a copy of the physical arc, which was awesome. And Becky was able to read it on Edelweiss.
I got it on Edelweiss, yep.
So, got that going on. Now, this is a book in verse, and I don't think I've ever read... None of her other books that I know of are in verse, so it's something new for her.
I don't think it is, yeah. From everything I've read, I think this was... But she says in the book, and I think I've read other places, that her father wrote poetry, and I get the feeling that she's written poetry before. But this is just the first time she's put it together and released it into the world like this.
Right. So this basically talks essentially about her life, and it really kind of brings in the ties from her other books. It kind of interweaves kind of where she came up with the premise of things like Catalyst and Winter Girls and Speak. It talks about her own kind of interactions with sexual assault, with rape culture, right? I mean, that's essentially really what it was. And it also talks about kind of the reader's reactions to her works and public speaking events. And it's very interesting. It's almost like going to an author talk, but in book form. In
book and verse. And it was interesting because I had actually, when I read Speak, I think it was the 10th anniversary edition, and there was a part, and there, which, it's up to
I read it when I was a teen.
Well, it's up to its 20th anniversary now, I want to say.
Jeez, now I feel old.
Yeah, because I want to say it was 2000. So, but
I don't think about how old I am.
But in the back of that book, she talks about when she would go do school visits, and boys would come up to her and say, well, I don't understand why Melinda's upset.
Right, and then so she started, working that into her actual speaking engagements because it happened so frequently.
Right, and I think it's interesting because she talks about that in this book, and I remember I was working with somebody who had a teenage son, and I showed her that part because his class was reading it, and she's like, oh, we're having this discussion when I get home.
Yeah, I appreciated that. I appreciated kind of seeing, what happened after is really kind of what it felt like. What happened after Speak, and she really talked about that. She obviously talked about, what led up to it.
Right.
But also, what happened afterwards.
Well, and the thing the big takeaway for me for this book, because I was very impressed by the whole book.
Oh, it was
it's
gorgeous.
Pretty pitch perfect.
And it's gorgeously written. She is a solid writer. Obviously I knew that before, reading this book, but, seeing her write in a totally new format and how well she can kind of work within those confines it was awesome. It was beautiful.
Well, and I just thought it was interesting because she does these engagements, and she talks about what she went through and talks about Speak. And she kind of became almost like this adult these kids felt got what they went through, and they could come up and talk to her. And I can't imagine, that's a huge, I don't want to say burden, but it kind of is. Because she basically became almost who they make confessions to. So, you would have kids come up and say, about they had been assaulted, or my friend got assaulted. And I just think how incredible of her to take that on.
Oh, yeah.
And she's never shied away from it. She's still doing it.
But also, and I guess I was struck by it. How hard, though, because the readers do feel comfortable coming to her with that. And so it's not like she can step away from the fact that she is a rape survivor. And I'm only putting it in the context of, my dad died when I was a teen, right? And so if I'm constantly speaking about grief, you can't get away from the fact that that person is dead, and that's not, you're not just that. And so I can imagine that would be very difficult.
Maybe that's how she deals with it.
And everybody's different, so certainly. But putting myself kind of in that place, that would be hard too.
Well, and she had an interesting life too. She spent a semester or a year living on a pig farm in.
Oh yeah, that was so
Denmark
fascinating.
Or Sweden.
It was Denmark.
Okay.
I thought.
Yeah. No. But that was interesting, and talking about her parents and all of that was interesting. I'm not sure. I feel like it's going to have to be a special teen reader to get this. I feel like it's going to appeal more to adults.
I don't necessarily know. I think the readers who enjoy her books are going to enjoy this, but I also think that her books are still relevant.
That is
But
true.
also, I think it's such a well done novel in verse that anybody looking for kind of poetry and novels in verse, they're totally going to gravitate to this.
So, and my thought was, my school system has a huge biography assignment, and those reluctant readers don't want to read about Jefferson or, any of that stuff. But if you give them a biography in verse, and there are very few of them, there are only like 2 or 3 of them out there. Mary's Monster is another good one. I think they would really like that. But this is like, I remember reading it, and I went to rate it on Goodreads, and I'm like, well, I have to give it a 5 because I can't think of anything she could have done differently.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty perfect.
Yeah.
So I guess we're at the point where we're going to rate it. So our rating scale goes from 5 unicorns down to 2 unicorns. If it was sucktacular, it is a horse and doesn't get a horn.
And like I said, it's a 5. I think it's an important novel for kids who have been assaulted, and I think it's an important novel also for the kids who want to be writers and can see how she did it.
Right, I can agree with that.
Because she talks about how many times she was rejected, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, and she even talks about the fact that she didn't know what she wanted to do. Like, she didn't want to live at home anymore because her family life was not great, but, like, she still kind of loved them, and she still didn't really know what she wanted to do. So, like, that was interesting, just kind of exploring that aspect of it. It was very well done, and I think, I mean, like, talking about it, yeah, I think I'll give it a 5 unicorns, too. Like, it was pretty perfect, and even though I know she's, like, a consistent award winner, I kind of hope that she gets recognized.
This feels like a Prince book.
Like, I really hope that she gets recognized for this book.
So that is where we are on Shout.
All right,
see you around.
See you around.
Bye.
Bye.